Have you ever met a woman who seems uncheckable? The kind of woman who walks through storms without losing her calm, who says no without guilt, who loves deeply but never loses herself in the process? That's what we call an awakened woman. She's not perfect, not immune to pain, but she's conscious, she's aware. She's awake to her worth, her wounds, and her power. And because of that awareness, there are boundaries she no longer allows anyone to cross. Ever again. These boundaries were built not from arrogance, but from wisdom, from lessons learned in heartbreak, manipulation, self-betrayal, and spiritual awakening. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These women have stopped calling it fate. They've taken back authorship of their lives. There was a time when she gave too much. Her love was endless, her empathy boundless. She thought love meant sacrifice and that being kind meant being available. But with every broken promise, every drained night spent trying to fix someone else, she realized that love without limits isn't love, it's self-abandonment. And the first boundary awakened women never let anyone cross again, the boundary of self-neglect. She no longer sacrifices her mental peace for someone else's comfort. She no longer over-explains her feelings just to be understood. If you can't meet her in emotional truth, she doesn't chase your validation, because she has learned that the most important relationship she will ever have is the one with her own soul. And when a woman honors that, she becomes magnetic not because she's trying to please, but because she's rooted in her worth. Once upon a time, she tolerated disrespect in subtle ways, people interrupting her, dismissing her dreams, making jokes that cut too deep. She stayed silent to keep the peace. But silence became suffocation. Now she's learned that peace built on silence is not peace at all. So the second boundary she holds sacred is around her respect. She doesn't tolerate emotional disrespect, even in disguised forms. She walks away from anyone who belittles her spirit, who mocks her growth, or who tries to shrink her light to make themselves comfortable. She no longer justifies her boundaries as being too much, because she knows her energy is sacred. Respect isn't negotiable. It's a reflection of how someone values your presence. If you can't meet her with respect, you simply won't meet her at all. Carl Jung believed that every person must confront their shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves we try to hide. For many women, the shadow is the people-pleaser, the caretaker, the one who smiles while she's breaking inside. The awakened woman has met that shadow. She's looked into its eyes and said, "I see you, but I no longer serve you." That's why her third boundary is emotional manipulation. She doesn't engage in guilt-tripping, love-bombing, or emotional blackmail. Whether it's a friend, family member, or romantic partner, she can sense the vibration of control behind fake concern. She's learned to read energy, not just words. She no longer falls for "I did this for you" when the real intent is power. She doesn't respond to silent treatments or emotional games. Her emotional freedom is her greatest achievement, and no one is allowed to play chess with her heart. The fourth boundary is perhaps the hardest one she ever had to build, the boundary against overgiving. Women are conditioned from birth to nurture, to serve, to make everyone else's life easier. But she has learned that overgiving is often a trauma response, a silent cry for love and approval. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The awakened woman finally understands that to become herself, she must stop living for others. She gives from overflow, not from emptiness. She helps when her heart is open, not when her energy is depleted. She knows that giving without balance leads to resentment, and resentment kills love faster than distance ever could. She now allows herself to receive compliments, help, rest, and abundance without guilt, because receiving is not selfish. It's self-honoring. The fifth boundary is one that most people don't see but deeply feel, her spiritual boundary. Once she's awakened, her energy becomes sensitive. She can feel when something doesn't align, a conversation that drains her, a space that feels heavy, a person whose presence feels chaotic. She used to ignore those intuitive nudges, brushing them off as overthinking. But now, she knows intuition is the language of the soul. So she doesn't force herself to stay where her energy feels off. She doesn't engage in gossip or drama because she knows those are low-frequency traps. Her spirituality isn't about rituals or appearances, it's about energetic hygiene. She guards her peace as sacredly as a temple because she understands that her energy is her currency. If you want to be in her space, you must bring peace, not chaos. Then there's the sixth boundary, the boundary around her time and attention. Before her awakening, she was available to everyone all the time. Texts, favors, crises, she was the dependable one. But she's learned that availability is not the same as love. In fact, always being available often attracts people who take more than they give. Now, she knows that time is the most precious gift she can offer. She invested in people who inspire her, not those who drain her. She gives attention to growth, to creativity, to purpose. She's learned the sacred art of saying no without apology. No to energy vampires. No to meaningless distractions. No to relationships that go in circles. Her time is her temple, and she decides who gets an invitation. Because every no she gives to what doesn't serve her is a louder yes to what does. Finally, the seventh boundary is the deepest of all. She never allows anyone to define her again. In the past, she tried to fit into boxes. The good girl, the loyal partner, the perfect daughter, the successful professional. She lived by labels, fearing rejection. But awakening shattered those illusions. She realized that people will always project their fears, insecurities, and expectations onto you. And if you live by those projections, you'll die a stranger to yourself. So now, she defines herself by her values, not by others' validation. She no longer needs to prove her worth because she's already enough. She can be soft and strong, emotional and wise, spiritual and grounded. She embraces her contradictions because that's what makes her whole. Jung said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." The awakened woman lives this truth every day. She doesn't hide parts of herself to be loved. She loves herself into wholeness. Every one of these boundaries was written in her soul through experience. They weren't learned in books or workshops, but through heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment. She learned that boundaries are not walls. They are doors that open to peace, love, and freedom. She knows that anyone who truly loves her will respect her boundaries, not resent them. Because love without respect isn't love, it's dependency. And dependency disguises itself as connection but only leads to pain. The awakened woman understands that her boundaries are her mirror. They reflect how deeply she's healed. They show how much she's learned to listen to her own needs without shame. She no longer apologizes for outgrowing people, habits, or versions of herself. Evolution requires endings. And sometimes, the bravest thing she can do is walk away, not out of anger, but out of love for her own soul. Because peace is not found in the absence of problems. It's found in the presence of self-awareness. Carl Jung's psychology reminds us that the journey to individuation, the process of becoming your truest self, requires boundaries. Without them, we lose ourselves in others' expectations. We become actors in a play we never agreed to perform. But when a woman awakens, she rewrites her script. She stops reacting and starts responding. She stops explaining and starts embodying. She stops chasing love and starts radiating it. That's the shift from unconscious living to conscious being. She's no longer addicted to chaos, to needing to fix others, or to proving her worth. She doesn't get validation from being the savior. Instead, she finds fulfillment in being authentic. She has learned that the people who fear her boundaries are the ones who benefited from her lack of them. And she's no longer afraid to lose those people, because she knows that losing someone who disrespects her isn't a loss, it's alignment. So when you meet an awakened woman, understand that her calmness wasn't inherited, it was earned. Her silence isn't submission, it's discernment. Her distance isn't coldness, it's self-protection. Her boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges leading her back to herself. She's not playing hard to get, she's playing hard to forget. Because once you've seen a woman who honors herself, you can never forget the energy she carries. It's the kind of energy that feels like freedom, the energy of someone who has faced her shadows, met her demons, and still chosen love. The world needs more women like this. Not angry, not bitter, but awake. Awake to their worth. Awake to their intuition. Awake to the power of saying no, because every woman who heals herself heals generations before and after her. Every boundary she sets is a declaration that says, I am free, free from manipulation, free from fear, free from the illusion that love means losing yourself. And maybe that's what awakening truly is, remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Jung believed that the process of becoming conscious is not comfortable, but it's necessary. To awaken is to burn illusions. To set boundaries is to rebuild your life from truth. The awakened woman doesn't hate the past, she honors it. Because every time she was broken, she discovered another piece of her wholeness. Every time she said yes when she wanted to say no, she learned to listen to herself louder. Every time she forgave too soon, she learned patience with her healing. Every mistake became medicine. Every heartbreak became initiation. So here she stands, not flawless, but free. Not guarded, but grounded. Her boundaries are not rigid fences, but sacred spaces that keep love pure and energy clean. She knows that she doesn't owe anyone access to her soul, her time, or her peace. Love that requires her to abandon herself is not love. It's bondage, but love that honors her boundaries. That's divine. That's conscious. That's the kind of love an awakened woman gives and receives. And maybe, as Jung might say, awakening is not about becoming someone new, but remembering who you've always been beneath the conditioning. The awakened woman has remembered. She knows she is not here to be small, to be silent, or to be endlessly accommodating. She is here to live aligned, to speak truth, to love consciously. She will never again let anyone cross the boundaries that protect her soul, because they were built from sacred lessons. They are her map back to authenticity, her armor against manipulation, and her invitation to true connection. She is no longer asleep in her own life. She's awake, and that awakening is her revolution. So, if you're listening to this and you feel tired of being the one who gives too much, forgives too quickly, or stays too long, maybe this is your sign. The universe is whispering, it's time to awaken. Time to draw your line in the sand. Time to protect your peace as if your life depends on it, because it does. The moment you honor your boundaries, you step into your power. The moment you stop betraying yourself for love, you begin to attract love that doesn't require betrayal. That's the secret the awakened woman knows. When you stop abandoning yourself, you stop attracting those who abandon you. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to prove anything. Just awaken, step by step, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. Because the woman who honors her boundaries becomes unstoppable, and not because she is unbreakable, but because she finally knows she can rebuild herself every time. She's no longer seeking light from others because she's become the light. And that light is sacred, unshakable, and eternal. That is the power of an awakened woman, and no one ever again gets to cross the sacred boundaries that guard her soul.